Hey everyone, this is part 2 on, presenting from the hip, my beliefs, and really it comes more than just beliefs into a rational and logical framework for looking at these things, and even consideration of what others feel on these topics. And this is just part 2, continuing off from the social issues that we considered, and also what I think is the most important, taxation, and coupled with that, benefits. So how the government collects money and distributes benefits. And I'm a very strong proponent for equality, that the government should not be benefiting one group over another or hurting one group more than another. Alright, so no, but I am a strong proponent of social justice, so I do keep that in mind when I talk about it in the first segment. So the second segment, I want to talk about universal background checks. Interesting enough, I'm actually wondering if they talk about, since they don't, I'm actually going to talk about it right now, infrastructure. So it has to do, to a large extent, with roads, public utilities, basic services, which in some cases cannot be administered in any other way but a monopoly. So the idea of a road, you cannot lay a second road on top of a road. And then, especially at equal cost, and then provide one road to people if they want to purchase it from one company as like a toll road, and the second road if they want to purchase it from another company, and maybe have a competition of two. And really, ideally, you want a competition of more than just two. But it's impractical, it's actually impossible with the road systems. And not just the road systems, but using it as an example, I am strongly against the toll system. Absolutely and strongly against it. It's one of the backbones of our economy, of competition, of the freedom of expression, and the ability to gather. It is vital to life itself. It is vital to the operation of a society. Without roads, our society would be dead. Our military would be dead because we couldn't move things around. We couldn't go to work and so forth. So, just my own 2 cents on that. There's certain infrastructure that the government needs to provide for free to all citizens. And it's not really for free, you know, we are paying our taxes, but there should not be a per-use charging of that. Definitely not a per-use charging of that, even if it's like really big, heavy vehicles that put a lot of wear and tear on those roads, right? Well, odds are those are going to be transport vehicles moving large goods for our economy. It's got to happen, and we all benefit from those goods moving around. The movement of those goods represents competition, and there's nothing more that we want than competition. Get those prices down. Move them where they need to be to the people that'll sell them for the prices that we want to buy them. So, absolutely not charging tolls for roads, for bridges. If it's worth being built, it should be built without tolls anywhere in this country. So, okay, universal background checks for gun purchases. Of a truth, the purchasing of a gun is one of those things where, you know, you have the one side that says if it's a criminal, they're going to get it illegally. That's not always true, but if you really want a gun, you probably will be able to find it illegally. So, you know, what's the purpose of a background check? How does the government fit into safety? And that's where I see government fitting in anything. It's primarily, pretty much only in safety and infrastructure. So, basically, you know, should the government require, before a person is allowed to purchase a gun, should they require that the person does not have a felony? Absolutely. And we already have laws in place which say if you're a felon, you're not allowed to purchase a handgun, and that'll come up in your background check. So why don't we want someone to have a gun if we're worried about them being lethally violent? It's kind of, redundant there. But if we're worried about them taking a life, then we should not allow them. So there's some felonies where it doesn't even involve taking life. People that use marijuana, are not the most violent people in the world. They're one of the least violent. Yet that's, as I remember it anyways, it's a felony. But I know other drugs are felonies. Now there are some drugs where their use does actually bring people to violence quite quickly and easily. Alcohol, for many people, not for others. So I would definitely say, yeah, do some checks to see basically if the person has a violent history or a violent inclination, and I mean a lethally violent, not just they get into barroom fights, and then of course restricted only on that kind of safety. There are other kinds of crimes, even felonies, where they're not violent at all, which I would say, you know what, and which don't even typically involve the use of a gun in committing them. And I would say, hey, for those felonies, if a person's shown a propensity to do that, things that don't involve guns or violence, or I should say lethal violence, this isn't an issue at all. And this kind of comes along the same lines with gun control. We do have a right to defend ourselves, and there is no reason that I shouldn't be able to use lethal force if necessary. Now, a lot of people don't understand what's necessary, so in replacing gun control, I would turn that into gun education. And I would definitely require gun education as a matter of safety. Everybody understands that if somebody, hits you in the stomach, it doesn't mean that you should pull out a gun and shoot him. You should realize that your life is not in immediate danger. If 5 guys come around you and one of them punches you in the stomach, okay, you could probably fear for your life at that point. The use of a lethal weapon is probably justified in that case. You would probably be fearing for your life. So yeah, gun control only in the aspect of gun training. And I would say for everybody should have gun training, because you might not know if you need a gun. And once you learn about the threats, the lethal threats, and the advantages of using a gun to protect your own life, which is an inalienable right for everyone, once you learn about guns, you may change your mind. And if you don't, I don't care. But everyone should understand them, and the responsibilities that come around them. Term limits for members of Congress. The problem really isn't, and this actually is a big deal, it isn't that politicians stay in office too long. It's that politicians, when they're in office after that first term, the longer they're in, the more people recognize them, and the more people vote for them just because of their name. But that really isn't the problem either. The bigger problem is that the politicians do not represent the people. In other words, they can get the vote of the people without actually having to represent them. But that's the case with pretty much every politician. Broken campaign promises, right? That's not an anomaly. That is absolutely a common practice. So instead of talking about term limits, instead what I would talk about is more like forced representation, which is to say, in order for a politician to act, they have to be able to collect enough support from their district, or from the people that are voting for them, collect enough support to show quite clearly that the majority of the people do agree with what they want to do. And that might not be very easy, but it would certainly keep politicians from going rogue, from acting on their own, from doing things that are against the interests of the people, from doing their own politicians' shoulder rubbing, back rubbing, behind the door deals type of a thing. So I think the total issue here is ensuring that the representatives represent the people. And that mechanism that I mentioned of requiring the politicians to go through a process to show that the people will support whatever they're going to vote for before they vote for it is absolutely required. There is the idea that politicians are more noble or better or smarter than the people and should be allowed to make their votes without the people weighing in, without being controlled by the people. And, in that case, I don't know. I have never seen that, to be honest. they're all corrupt. Power corrupts. Not all of them, but I mean, you'd probably say 98% of them. I mean, there's a few gems in there, but um, I don't think that there's any kind of noble, I guess, better among the population. We're not going to find certain people that are just people that we should trust to make decisions for us. Yeah, there is a lot of unintelligence among the population, but that mostly tends to lead to people disagreeing with each other, not coming together. There is mob rule, and you don't want the mobs to get away where they're doing really mobbish type things, like persecuting a minority group and things like that. But in a way, that's more of the court's role, anyways. But I would probably give some power leeway to the representatives to be able to not do what the population wants them to do, unless the population can show an overwhelming majority or a supermajority that they want to do it. Kind of like overrule the veto of a representative. The representatives become kind of like presidents to our main body of population, which we might call a Congress-like thing. So I'd model it more like that. Drug policy. Alright, so what's the big problem with drugs? Well, there are a couple of primary concerns. One is that they tend to lead to people doing crimes, felonies, huge violence. They tend to lead to people stealing a lot of money to support their habits, doing anything to, even taking life in order to get their next fix. So there's a lot of that element, but that's not with all drugs. So for those drugs that are that bad, instead of criminalizing or decriminalizing, I would make it more like a forced rehabilitation type of a thing, where if you're doing some kind of drug that's known to be lethal or known to have a very big problem with violence, some of this really hard stuff, definitely force a rehabilitation. Otherwise, we're prosecuting on their crimes. So if they commit a crime while they're using drugs, I would definitely say that either we hold them to full responsibility for their crime, which I would side on, or we say that they are not allowed to ever use that crime again. If it's a felony crime that they do, they're not allowed to use that drug again that they're claiming as their justification or their defense. I still have a hard time swallowing how we could accept that kind of defense. I mean, if you use a drug, you have to accept, the responsibility if you use it voluntarily. Even if you don't have control of your actions, that action to take that drug is accepting responsibility for whatever actions you may do afterward. That's my thinking on it. So that would be my drug policy. So domestic surveillance, you know what? Wow, we've got some amendments to the Constitution. We have some Bill of Rights that directly address this. Freedom of speech, freedom of privacy, freedom from searches and seizures. Oh my gosh, it goes on and on. This domestic surveillance, I would say, should only be allowed in the public sphere, which is, say, on open public roads, public spaces, not peering into private areas through windows. Anything that's publicly available, publicly seen, done in the public sphere, that's fine. Phone calls are pretty much private. I can't imagine a public phone call. But if such ever it was invented, I say sure, let them tap it, if it's completely public. Campaign finance is just a weird thing. People are worried about some small group controlling politicians. We already talked about it before. Do politicians represent the people or not? And I already put my idea on how to ensure that they represent the people. And if some people want to donate a credible amount of money to a politician who won't be able to represent the people in a wrong way, then fine, that's up to them. They'll still have to go to the people for their support on whatever it is that this corporation is trying to finance. Good luck in trying to sell it. If they can, and it's bad, well, you're not just blaming the politician, you're blaming the people as well. Net neutrality. and we're going to actually coming up on time, so I'm going to kind of conclude part 2 really quickly. We've already talked about the Patriot Act. Net neutrality, the distribution of information, this is entirely freedom of speech. There should be no governance over the net. We don't want to become a China. And no matter how bad it is, I mean, there is some bad stuff on the internet, I know. But unless they're violating a crime and within our jurisdiction, and it's available to the public, I would say no. There is no business of the government to go in there. So it's the same thing as, government police on the public streets seeing some crime. But no, higher rates for some traffic than others, absolutely not. No freaking way. This is biggest infringement on the internet is basically our freedom of speech. Affirmative action kind of goes along with what I said about taxes. There's no reason why we should treat any one group different than another. And basically, when we ask the question, what race are you? We violate treating one group different than another, because there's no way you can ask that question without treating one group different than another. Unless you're just conducting an anonymous, free, non-required survey, including that the survey itself is not required to be conducted. Then maybe you want to get statistics purposes, but in no way should you be using those statistics for any policy whatsoever. We cannot treat any group different than another. I know that one group has been oppressed. Man, that oppression has been very bad, I know. And so have Indians, and so have a lot of other groups. And there's maybe this thinking that we have to, I guess we have to support that group more than the rest to kind of make up for what we did. Because we put them in such a plight, now we have to help them get out of that plight. We have to help them get out of that plight for sure, but not in an affirmative action based way. And I say, are you black? Then we're going to help you have an opportunity. No. I would say we help everyone have an opportunity equally. And from birth, I think, black or white, if they have equal opportunity and access to our assistance to, open up whatever opportunities there are, equal access, then we're doing the right thing. Because really, I mean, both races have gone through some terrible times. All races have. All genders, all religions have been through to hell and back. So and even if all hadn't, still, we cannot afford to violate equality and basically violate our freedoms. Just to try to advance equality and advance our freedoms. It doesn't work that way. It's impossible. We cannot commit an evil nor to advance good. Social Security, mandatory retirement. You know what? I'm not a fan of this, but I don't really have a strong logical view about this. I'll have to talk. This right here would be its own discussion point, and really not one of the biggest ones on my radar at the moment. Yes, it is failing. Yes, it does have major problems. Yes, I do not like the regulations on how it is used and what it's trying to accomplish, but yeah, I'm not a fan of that. And then gerrymandering, you know what? I think it almost speaks for itself. Really, I think probably the easiest way to draw the lines for congressional districts is probably to say, all right, we're going to completely ignore any political data whatsoever. We're going to have a machine use some rules for writing the lines, and try to have that machine draw those lines in the least funny shapes possible. Right? You can see what I mean with the shapes you see in here. The least funny shapes possible. Just give the machine some rules, have it draw the lines, make sure that the rules have nothing to do with political data in any way, and then so it's not taking advantage of these are poor areas, these are rich areas, or anything like that. make sure that the populations in each are, pretty close, and it should be good. Machines are great at being impartial, as long as the coding is designed to ignore geopolitical data. Alright, so yeah, let's talk about the rest of this in the third segment, and thanks for listening. My biggest goal is to hope that maybe you like, or maybe you can explain why you don't like, the logic that I'm presenting behind these ideas, and maybe even that you would support me in a theoretical election. That you might think, hey, you know what, this guy might actually do something to help our democracy and to help me be represented better. So anyhow, let me know what you think, and thanks for watching.